there we go to watch Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad champion Steve Rubin on your right against Logan Beck and Kiki Cord on your left. Getting ready here for round number 1. We are underway here in round number 1. And it looks like Steve is going to start things off with a Thraben Inspector. That means he's going to get a clue, Max McVitie clue, of course. And you saw Wallace actually starting off with a copy of Celestial Colony, so we may have the wrong deck list in front of us, unfortunately. We will find out here in just a moment. Yeah, it looks like he is playing a different deck here, so we'll get this information sorted out for you. But we can still call the action here. So you see an island and a Celestial Colony to start things off here for Daniel. I have to imagine if he's playing some sort of control deck here, be it Jeskai, Mardu, what have you, going to be a little bit difficult here. So Inspector going to come across here for 1 point of damage. Down to 19. We'll see what Steve's follow-up is. It's Ithalia, and I think that's an important card to Spell Snare.
Yep. Whatever deck Rubin's opponent is playing, we'll find out momentarily.
Yes.
Probably pretty dense with spells.
Yeah, yeah. However, apparently they're not very dense with lands because he does not play a land. So here comes Steve, in for 1 with the Inspector. The follow-up is a Knight of the White Orchid and just a passing of the turn. Well, Remand is going to bounce that back to Steve's hand. So, Steve's opponent will draw a card. A Mutavault here for Steve, and he'll just pass the turn back.
The deck list in front of me is Daniel Wallace's, and it is a P4 deck list, so we don't have the right thing in front of us at all right now.
An Azorius Signet and a passing of the turn. Note that there was a land that was played. It was a Ghost Quarter. Steve's start here, pretty slow. And obviously tried to resolve Ithalia, tried to resolve Knight of the White Orchid, but he doesn't have a lot going on the battlefield just yet.
And it's problematic for him in this matchup because whether it's Restoration Angel, whether it's something like Supreme Verdict or Wrath of God, Rubin does not have a late game advantage in this kind of matchup. So the early turns getting blunted there with Spell Snare and Remand slowing Rubin down. Yes, he's still on the battlefield. He's dealing some damage, but he's got to be wary about the 4 and 5 mana spells that his opponent is going to bring to the table.
A Mutavault did come crashing in. There's a Plains, another attempt at the Knight of the White Orchid. Does it resolve this time? The answer is yes. Logan will now play an Academy Ruins. And I had a feeling, given the Signet, he was on Blue-White Tron, but I don't see any Tron lands out there just yet. But it appears as though he is Blue-White Troning, but his build of things, a little bit weird here. He's got 4 Urza's Tower, 3 Urza's Power Plant, and 3 Urza's Mine.
The sampler.
Is that what you want to call that?
The sampler.
All right, fair enough. Rubin with a Horizon Canopy as his land for the turn.
It's essentially a Gifts Ungiven deck. There's a lot of different Gifts Ungiven packages it can generate, and has Crucible of Worlds plus Academy Ruin, so you can set up the getting Tron that way if you want to via Gifts Ungiven.
Honor the Pure here from Steve. So those creatures are a little bit larger. Looks like Mutavault's going to wake up and come into the red zone as well. Note that Mutavault does not get bigger from Honor of the Pure. Kind of a non-bow there, but the rest of Steve's creatures do, and so he'll serve in with quite a few of them. Looks like Logan's going to take maybe all of this damage, and it looks like he will. Now, I did catch a quick glimpse of Logan's hand. There's an Emrakul in there. Not exactly where that's supposed to be, but here's a Gifts Ungiven, one of the more powerful cards in his deck, so he's going to try to resolve this. I can't imagine Steve has a counterspell, and he does not, so Logan going to go digging through the old deck here and see what he can find with Gifts Ungiven. Looks like it's going to be Elishnorn on Barrel Rights, the old 1-2 punch that we see a lot with Gifts Ungiven decks.
One of the more common Game 1 packages you're going to see with Gifts Ungiven. Good news here for Rubin is that because of Honor of the Pure, his creatures have 3 toughness. That means Elishnorn isn't going to kill everything on Rubin's battlefield. So if Rubin has a removal spell like Path to Exile for the Elishnorn, life goes on.
Now, one thing about Steve's deck list, It's very creature dense, which is not going to surprise you given the title there of Mono White Humans. And then Honor the Pure makes sense in a base white aggro deck. So now you're probably wondering, what kind of removal does he have? Only 1 Path and 2 Dismember. So he's actually pretty short on removal spells. So if he has Path, well, it's the only one that he does have. So here's Unburial Rites. Going to return Elesh Norn. As you mentioned, none of the creatures are going to die thanks to Honor the Pure. So that enchantment doing a lot of work in this particular game. And I think Steve, well, he's not a Pro Tour champion on accident. You got to have it. And
yeah,
it looks like he does have it.
I have exactly 1.
Yeah. And Logan says that 1 Path is going to win you the game. So Steve Rubin is going to win game number 1 here over Logan Path.
I mean, I don't want to draw 2. Not in this matchup. I kind of just want the 1.
In this matchup, you don't want to draw 2 Path Exiles, and he is not capable of doing that. 1 is good enough. Steve Rubin wins game number 1 here over Logan Beck. Mono White Humans very quickly up a game over the old Blue-White Tron deck. Now, I'd say that's typically how the Mono White Humans games are going to go. I mean, a little bit slower than I'm sure Steve would have liked, but there was some resistance on Logan's end.
Yeah, was able to play a little bit of removal. The Honor of the Pure was very important for him being able to survive Elesh Norn entering the battlefield. Just had the right balance of mixture of removal and some pressure and a little bit of utility.
Sideboards we go. We'll start with Logan Beck and his 2 Dispels, 2 Negates, 2 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Leyline of Sanctity. An Engineered Explosives, a Tormod's Crypt, a Celestial Purge, a Disenchant, a Terastodon, an Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, and Iona, Shield of Myria. Obviously, he's got some things going on here.
Yeah, I like bringing in the 2 copies of Timely Reinforcements. He's not playing against Burn, but it's still a matchup where he's going to be behind on the battlefield, behind in life total. A good way to help stabilize here. He's got a couple good 1-ofs here that are fine to just draw or add to some Gifts Ungiven packages. I think Engineered Explosives and Ugin are both powerful cards in the matchup. They're very different. Ugin, I think, it's an expensive card, obviously, but it is a game-winning play against a deck that floods the battlefield with color permanents like Humans does. And the Engineered Explosives, sometimes they'll be good to gift for, and it's also just a fine card to naturally draw.
On the other side of things here for Steve, 2 Ranger Vios, 2 Return to the Ranks, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Dismember, there's those additional paths, 2 more on the sideboard, 3 Stony Silence, and then 3 Auriok Champion.
I don't think I'm looking to go too heavy in this kind of matchup. I could see the Grafdigger's Cages coming in here. Ranger of Eos is fine, I think, if he fears more of a Wrath of God Supreme Verdict kind of sideboard, but I think Rubin just wants to stay threat dense and removal light, probably won't change around too much.
Well, that gives you an idea what both players are working with. Logan Beck will be on the play with his Blue-White Tron deck, but as these players sideboard and shuffle up, we will very quickly talk about the weekly sale that's taking place at Star City Games. We got a new weekly sale every week of the year, and right now, you can save on select wholesale.
And these wholesale lots are collections of things like cycles of lands, like the Khans comes into play, tap lands and so forth. They're all over the place, but a lot of these wholesale lots are very good if you have a friend who's looking to get into Magic and is just looking to get their hands on a lot of powerful commons and uncommons they can start adding to their decks to get started. Again, the sale ends Monday, 11:59 a.m. At 11 o'clock, a new sale goes live every week, so make sure to be going back to the website every week, see what the new sale is.
StarCityGames.com for our weekly sales. We go ready here for game number 2 between Steve Rubin, Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad champion, and Logan Beck. Mono White Humans, apparently a deck that is kind of making a name for itself in Modern. I have not run into it just yet on Magic Online, but you can kind of see the appeal to this deck. It is very aggressive, very low to the ground. It can kill you probably on turn 3, maybe almost certainly turn 4, and sometimes turn 3.
And if you look at Rubin's deck list here, a lot of it is new stuff. Cards that were printed over the last year. You have Kytheon, Thalia's Lieutenant, and Thraben Inspector. And it's not like there's just one copy of these cards. 4, 3, and 3. So that's a big chunk of the deck list, stuff that came out within the last year.
And again, you mentioned the spells in the deck: 4 Honor of the Pure, a Path, 2 Dismembers, 2 Spectral Possessions, and then 3 Brave the Elements. So it does actually have a way to get through a board stall as well. Brave, a very powerful card in decks like this for numerous reasons.
Yeah, it's very good to fizzle a single removal spell, can fizzle a sweeper, and if the board gets cluttered, sometimes it allows you to punch through a bunch of blockers. Also, 4 copies of Icacian Javelineers, one of my all-time favorites.
A delightful little card there.
Believe Time Shifted and Time Spiral.
That is correct.
Yep.
That's correct. Very well done. Somehow you were able to get that right, but when I asked you Magic Trivia on the podcast, just dragging your feet.
Well, you didn't ask me what set was Icacian Javelineers reprinted in, because I would have had that one.
You would have nailed that one? Nice. Very nice. Logan Beck will be on the play here with this Tron deck. Looks like he might be taking a mulligan here, and he is. As Steve is going to take a look at his opening hand. 21 lands in this Mono White Humans deck. Not a lot of lands floating out here, but it's not a deck that needs a lot of lands to function. And you also get to play a couple of copies of Night of the White Orchid as well.
You want to make your land drops early on in the deck like this, and it does go up to 3 mana with such Spectral Procession, has some other things to do. So you don't want to be that land light, but it's very easy for this deck to flood out, which is why you see things like 4 copies of Mutavault, 3 copies of Horizon Canopy, so the deck can make its land drops and then have things to do later on with extra mana.
Logan will take a look at 6 cards now.
I was never a big fan of playing aggressive decks that only play, 17, 18 lands, because I feel like if you miss your early land drops, sometimes you just don't come out of the game smoothly, and then the other deck starts casting 4 and 5 mana spells you can't catch up. My preferred style of building beatdown decks is have more lands than you kind of need, but make sure the lands can do other things, so when the game goes on later, you're not flooding out. You have things to do with your mana, and Rubin's got a lot of lands that function that way.
We're underway here in game number 2. A Celestial Colonnade is where Logan Beck will start. For Steve, it's a Plains. Now the question is, which one drop is it going to be? He's got so many in his deck. And he'll start with a Kithian. Over to Logan Beck we go. And there's his mine, just passing of the turn. So if Steve wasn't sure if he was Tron or not, now we know for sure he is. He just doesn't have as many Tron pieces as most Tron decks do. Kithian coming in here for 2. Beck going to fall down to 18. The follow-up is a Thraben Inspector. That'll resolve along with the Max McVitie Clue. And now a Soldier of the Pantheon. So Kithian can be transforming as soon as turn number 3, which I think Steve's deck is going to be able to enable a lot.
Yes, and I think it's important for him to do in this kind of matchup because Beck likely has access to cards like Supreme Verdict and Wrath of God. If he can get the Kithian flip next turn, then he's at least got one threat that can play through it.
Well, Path Exile is going to take care of Kithian. Do not want that thing to transform. So basic Plains is what Steve will search up as a result. Logan just trying to stabilize the board. In situations like this, you don't mind giving your opponent a land. You just want to get to the later stages of the game.
Yeah, and that threat especially, Beck needs to get off the table because a lot of his defense is predicated on sweepers. Also, Rubin's deck doesn't have that much to do with extra mana, so the path can be free.
Back over to Logan Beck will go. He'll draw a card. Remember, he did mulligan a 6 this game, so he's working on one less card. There's Nurse's Power Plant, so he's one Tron piece away from having a boatload of mana, but for now he'll just pass the turn back over to Steve Rubin. A Plains here for Steve. That's a Thalia's Lieutenant. See if this resolves. Beck wants to take a look at that card. We can do the same. Thalia's Lieutenant, very powerful new addition from Shadows over Innistrad. You would think only good in Standard, but apparently good in multiple formats.
Lots of good humans to choose from in the modern format. Card pool expands. These kind of enablers tend to get more powerful. And this is a strategy that has often struggled to kill people quickly. So this card really speeds up your clock in the matchups where your battlefield's not being contested.
Here's another Thalia's Lieutenant. So all of a sudden these creatures are enormous. And Steve is looking to close this game out in probably 2 turns now with this sort of attack. This is an attack here for 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Beck going to fall down to 11, facing lethal next turn.
A slightly dangerous play here from Rubin because he is exposed pretty heavily here to a sweeper. But Beck needs to have it and another white source of mana. Not a guarantee here. And in fact, I don't think there's a route for Beck to cast Supreme Verdict next turn because he needs white, white, blue, and has 2 colorless lands on the battlefield. So it kind of has to be Wrath of God or some very weird collection of cards. So it is a risky play on the surface. But first of all, Rubin's hand may not allow him to do anything else. And then secondly, it's unlikely that Beck can cast a sweeper next turn based on the information Rubin has right now.
You saw a Thirst for Knowledge there from Logan Beck. He drew 3, discarded 2. One of the cards he discarded was an Emrakul. And of course, there's a shuffle clause with that card. The question those players were asking were, does the Thirst for Knowledge actually get shuffled in as well? The answer is yes. So Thirst for Knowledge, Emrakul, the rest of Logan's graveyard gets shuffled into his deck. The question now is, does he have a way to stabilize the board? Because again, Steve Rubin is presenting lethal the very next turn. So Logan will draw. Looks like he picked up a copy of Azorius Signet. Does he have that other white source to be able to cast a master removal spell?
You know, if Beck's lands were, let's say it was 2 blue-white dual lands and 1 Tron piece, I think you might have seen Rubin only play one of the lieutenants and then crack a clue, something a little bit more conservative. But with Beck having the lands that he had in play, I like Rubin going for the throat here.
Gotta try to get him dead. That's all you can do.
There's an argument that no matter what, Rubin is just supposed to go for the kill, no matter what the lands look like, because he doesn't have a late game advantage in this kind of matchup. But Beck is especially vulnerable because of the lands in play.
That's another copy of Thirst for Knowledge.
I mean, this is going to have to be a real good one to survive next turn.
To say the least. Sphinx's Revelation, excuse me, among the cards that have been drawn here. Gonna discard an Expedition Map. Ain't got no time for that. Another Colonnade past the turn back. And that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's just facing lethal on the board right now, so unless he's got something very creative, and this will definitely drive the hammer home now, as there's an Honor of the Pure. All these white creatures are going to get that much larger. Everything's going to attack, and that's going to do it. Steve Rubin going to win this match over Logan Beck. 2-0. Mono White Humans going to take care of Blue White Tron, and it's a great start for our most recent Pro Tour champion.